Hey, this is Stryker. Welcome aboard the USS Stennis as I start to taxi towards Catapult 1. I wanted to talk to you today about dynamic foveated rendering. This was recently enabled by Eagle Dynamics in their multi-threaded release of the open beta for DCS. Currently, only Varjo headsets are supported with the dynamic foveated rendering. So what this does is the headset tracks where you're looking in the headset, and with the software, it can upscale or increase the resolution of the area you're focusing on and lowers everything else in the peripheral. As you can see, here's just an example where that focus area is nice and sharp, and then everything else is kind of blurry and jaggy, but you don't really notice that because you're just looking. You're really just you can only really focus on that small square area. Now sometimes you can in the game I can see where the focus area is, and it's not too big, but I don't notice anything else because if I focus on it looking at my peripheral vision, I can't really notice that, hey, it's not as high resolution. That works really well, and what it does is it allows the system to push more detail into your headset at the area you're looking at, and let you run the headset at a higher pixel count per eye, right? The PPI, I guess, whatever. So I run it at 39, the PPD setting, and everything is super sharp. I don't even think I need to enable MSAA, and I don't notice any jagginess. I did notice the jagginess, though, when I was looking at my recording, because when I record VR, I'm actually recording the mirror using OBS. So I do need to keep my settings turned up so that these recordings look better. I could probably get better performance if I lower the resolution of the mirror and disable some additional features. I don't need to enhance the visual quality, but I get pretty good frames per second. As you can see, I have a little display up. I just took off with bad weather and rain and everything, and I think this is the Marianas map I'm on. It beats up on your FPS, but I have some very high settings right now. So to get these frames in DCS, it's really only possible because of that multi-threading, and because I'm using the foveated rendering, the dynamic foveated rendering, to track where I'm looking. So how can you tell that it's actually working? I've had these questions, and so what I wanted to do is kind of put this together and demonstrate what you can see. So here I am sitting on the runway in Syria, and you're going to see the FPS line kind of go up and down. When it goes up, I'm looking down into the cockpit, even though my head is looking forward. When I look back up, it drops back down. I think it's about 10 frames per second difference there. See, looking down, looking up. It's pretty neat to be able to see it. It's very subtle in this, though. So I'm looking straight ahead. Now I'm looking down in the cockpit with my eyes. Now I'm looking back up. So there was someone put together a map, that kind of a stress test, if you will, and someone asked me if I could run through it and see how my system performs. I've got a nice, pretty beefy system, so I have all my settings maxed out. And so here I am. I'm going to fly on this map. I'm going to go through the mission several times. It's actually kind of it's a neat. You fly towards the shore, and there's a little battle going on. It's all AI stuff, and generally it's not too bad. But there is one part that will come up that's pretty hard on the system, and that's when a whole bunch of MLRS rockets dump out all of their cluster munitions, and those cluster munitions start to detonate. And you'll see the frames per second tank. You'll be able to tell where that is. So yeah, it's just up ahead. So let's go ahead and get started on running this stress test. You're going to go through it several times, just replaying the same track. right, so here we are at stress test 1. You can see all of those rockets flying overhead, and each M26 contains 644 dual-purpose improved conventional munitions. And so there's a lot of those flying across the screen, and when they disperse or dispense the submunitions, it really, all that stuff exploding over there really wreaks havoc on your frame rate. But it's pretty cool. So I can look wherever. Everything is just going to render as is. And you'll see, now you can see those frames dropping. You see that white mist off by the river? That's where all the submunitions are detonating. And then as I go on past, you can see the frames pick back up. So I'm going to do another test, same run, but this time I'm going to look forward, and I do have dynamic foveated rendering enabled. But I'm just going to stare straight ahead at the flight path indicator in the HUD. And the foveation square extends just kind of on each side of that HUD, kind of reaches to the top and the bottom. But as I fly along, that's the area that's being rendered in a higher resolution. The stuff off to the side is rendered with a lower resolution. And you're going to see that we'll have the detonations going off pretty soon, but it'll bring down the frame count, but the frame rate doesn't drop down as low as it does with no dynamic foveated rendering at all. So there is an improvement, with that area that is being rendered at a lower resolution. It helps improve your overall frame rate. Let's try it again. So this time I have dynamic foveated rendering on, and I'm staring straight ahead, but I'm going to glance to the right and then straight ahead. And you'll be able to tell if you look at that frame counter. It'll start to drag down, and then when I glance, you'll see a significant dip. And then when I look back forward, you'll see it pick back up. And this is really just to demonstrate, how well this works. So when I glance to the right, it's trying to render all that stuff going on, and it really tanks the frames. So here we go. I'm glancing to the right, looking forward. Glancing to the right, looking forward. Glancing to the right, see that? It's just like slowing right down. It's very noticeable. But once again, the frame rate does not drop so significantly as it would when you do not have dynamic foveated rendering, because that stuff is getting rendered lower. So this next test, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking to the right. My head's turned to the right, focused kind of around it where that counter graph is, maybe a little bit to the right of it. But my eyes are going to be staring straight ahead. So my head's turned to the right, but my eyes are focused straight ahead at that flight path indicator. So that's where the higher rendering is going on. And this is just kind of to demonstrate what it looks like. And you're going to see it's going to be similar to that first run where all I was doing was staring straight ahead. See, the frame count drags down slowly, and then it starts to creep back up. And that's the worst it ever gets, but you can see that mist on the ground over there. That's where everything's blowing up. No impact, right? Because I was focused staring straight ahead. So I got one more test coming up, and it's basically repeat of the last one, but this is where I'm going to be staring. My head's turned to the right, my eyes are focused straight ahead, but every now and then I'm going to look with my eyes over to where the explosions are happening, and you'll see a familiar severe dip in the frames per second as that higher foveated area is trying to render all that stuff, and it just hammers away at the frames. So they're starting to explode. Glancing right, looking at it, glancing straight ahead, glancing right, passing straight ahead. So again, the idea with this is just to show you how well this does what it's doing, like how this dynamic foveated rendering really works, right? And it when I'm in the game, it works amazingly. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to stick around, we're just going to float around in-game watching the MLRS do their thing, shoot some rockets, and what it's like to be near ground zero when they detonate. And before we get to that rocket cinematic sequence, there's a few things I wanted to touch on. First of all, I wanted to say don't go rushing out to buy a Aero or any Varjo headset just so that you could get dynamic foveated rendering. When Eagle Dynamics changes their engine to use Vulkan or puts in something else, it could very well break dynamic foveated rendering, and then we're kind of back to where we were with the multi-threading, which is a big improvement, and hopefully the other graphical improvements with the engine changes would help out as well. So it's just kind of a nice to have, and the idea of this video is just to show, hey, it works, and it works really well, and it's cool, and wouldn't it be nice if we can get this working in other games, and other headsets get this? Who knows? The big draw with the Varjo headsets is just that it's a very full display, clear image, and it's great. The dynamic foveated rendering does help us be able to push the resolution or the pixel density for the headset to its max, because that's a lot of rendering being pushed through the headset, and get good frame rates, right? But that's really the big draw for getting like an Aero, for example, is just you want that edge-to-edge clarity. It has a cost, but for me, it was worth it. So that's it. Thanks for watching this. If you stuck through all this, I appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, put something in the comments, and I can try to answer it. If I don't know the answer, I'll find someone who does. If you wanted to stick around, there's a little cinematic sequence around the MLRS rockets exploding, just kind of showing what goes on that receiving end for all those rockets you saw flying across the sky. Anyway, take care, have fun, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you in the sky.